Hi guys, Samantha from Jessama Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create faux labradorite. So, what you're going to need is to start off with a sheet of black clay rolled out on your thickest setting, as you can see here, and I've also got on a piece of plain printing paper because I want to smooth it out. And then I'm going to place another piece of printing paper over the top, and then just burnish. And this is just to get our clay nice and smooth because we're going to be applying mica powders to it. And I'm using Primo today, but just about any brand will work. Souffle is not going to work simply because of the texture that it has, but any other brand of clay will work. So just burnish a bit to get it nice and smooth. There we go. And then when you lift it up, you shouldn't be able to see any bubbles or lumps or anything like that. Just got a little bit here. There we go, all smooth. Okay. And I'm just using plain printing paper. Okay, so next you're going to need some mica powders. Now any mica powders will work. I'm using the ones that I'm selling on my Etsy shop, but the basic mica powders that you'll need is a dark blue, kind of a turquoise sky blue, a peacock blue, and then a green that is on the yellow side of the colour spectrum, and then some sort of yellow or gold. Gold's best because it's darker than yellow. So any mica, you can use any mica powders, but you want them in those sorts of colours. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the yellow, or the gold in this case. I'm just going to open it up, and I'm working on paper, so this makes it a lot easier. I'm just going to dip in a little bit, and I'm just going to kind of draw it around a little bit. I'm not going to tap it down just yet. And then I'm just going to go around, and I'm going to kind of put this gold into areas. And now I'm just doing it kind of like what my labradorite looks like. So if you don't know exactly what sort of pattern you want, go and have a look online, see what sort of patterns there are. There are different colours as well, so if you don't happen to have these mica powder colours, there's like purple labradorite, there's labradorite that's more green and doesn't include so much blue. So go and have a check and see what you can find. Okay, and then I'm just going to go and tap this down. And it doesn't matter if the mica powder kind of spills outwards, that's fine because we're going to be doing some blending. You just want to tap it down so it's stuck. And then I kind of tap all the way around it to get rid of excess, so that we get kind of almost like a little bit of a smoky ring around the main part. Okay, and I'm just going to do one more over here. Okay, and then always close up your mica powder after you are finished, never leave it open. Then you want to move on to the green, and I have just a little bit of this one. And I'm just going to take a little bit, you don't need much, and I'm going to go and tap that around the gold, just in a ring, so you want to kind of overlap. So you want it a little bit out from the gold, but you also want to be overlapping with the gold, so you get kind of like a blend. And then just tap around. Okay, and then repeat with these ones. Okay, so here's how it looks so far. Now I'm not sure how it looks from your point of view, but I bet you're not catching the sparkle, so let me just shine this around. There you are. So you can see that in certain directions, it really catches the light, which is exactly what we want in labradorite. Okay, so now we are going to move on to our kind of peacock blue, which is kind of like half green, half blue. And before I open it, I always like to tap it down, just to make sure that the mica powder is away from the cap. Okay, I'm just going to take a little bit of that and dab it around. And we'll overlap a bit as well, kind of to get that into a bit of a blend. And then I will do that around every single one of these. And this is why I like to start with the gold, because you're working from your gold outward. Okay, so here's how it's looking so far. So let me catch a light for you with that. There we are. So you can see at one angle it's really bright, but then another angle it's quite dull, which is what's really nice about the mica powders. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next one, and again it's basically just a ring around everything. And now you're going to get these areas where it's really close to the others. That's fine, you don't have to worry about those areas, just go and fill them in, and then you won't be able to put the next colour around that one. And then as I'm doing this, I like to brush the mica powder inwards so that it creates a bit of a blend. Just like that. And so I'll just go around all of these, and you're going to get some areas, like I think over here we'll be able to put the last colour in. But yeah, some of them we won't be able to put the last colour in, which is fine, because the last colour is really dark. Okay, and just brush that mica powder flat. Okay, and I'll just continue around each one of these. There we are. Now we're going to move on to the last colour, which is this really nice dark blue. And we're just going to fill in the remaining spaces. And again, you can use any pattern you want. You can basically use any colour. If you go and have a look at photos, I've seen labradorite that has orange in it, which is inside the yellow. So that will be really interesting. Some of them have pinks and purples in them. So don't feel constricted to just use like blues, yellows and greens, especially if you don't happen to have those mica powders. Go see what mica powders you have, get them all together, and then go on the internet and see what you can find, and then make the labradorite that you have the mica powders for. And also, you don't have to necessarily use mica powders, you can use eyeshadow as well. Eyeshadow works fairly well. It's not as good as mica powders because it's not as bright, but it works pretty well. So if you only have eyeshadow, you can try that out too. Okay, and here is how it should look. So let me just twist it around so you can see that it catches the light, and it looks really pretty when it does. But labradorite always has a fairly dark background to it, so let me see if I can catch this one on camera. There we go. So hopefully you can see it does catch the light at different points, but most of the time it's actually quite dark unless you happen to catch it just right. So that's why the mica powder is really good at it. So you can see that yellow part glows when I twist it this way, but then the blue part glows really nicely when I switch it this way. You can see that there are some strange lines going on around down here, and there's another section off to the corner over here. You can see even on the back that we have some shiny spots like over here. So that is why I choose to put on black. Now what we want to do is we want to grab another piece of paper again, place it over the top, and I want to gently smooth, because this is going to make sure that that mica powder is nice and stuck in there. Just going to make sure it's all smooth, because when you're using a brush you can get some brush strokes that you don't really want. So I just like to smooth it off. And there we are. You can see that we do pick up a little bit of mica powder, but not much, and that means that it's going to be nice and smooth, and it's going to have an even better reflective quality. Okay, so now what you need is a blade of some kind. Any blade will work, and what you want to do is you want to go across and you want to start doing these little lines, and you want them all going in the same direction, and try and make it somewhat random, some of them smaller, some of them larger, just like that. And you can see that it's going to mark up the clay, and then when I reflect this, hopefully you can see there we are, that they show quite well. And it's like in the Labradorite where you have kind of these dark lines in the background. You can do some long twisting lines if you want, but I'm mainly going for like these little streaks right in the background. Okay, so here it is now that I have done all of those little lines. Takes a little while, but it's definitely worth it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take another piece of plain paper, and I'm just going to give this probably a quick brush over, just to get rid of any flakes that might have accumulated. So hopefully you can see that there are a few coming off. And now you don't have to worry about removing the mica powder when you're doing this, because that is why we smoothed it off before we did this, because it makes sure that the mica powder is secure. And then just blow that away. Bring over your paper and just give it a quick burnish to press down any edges. Okay, there we are, and that's just going to flatten it out a little bit. So let me show you how that looks now. Okay, so now we are ready to start assembling our piece. So I'm going to take that off and flip. And there you can see there's a beautiful shine to it. And now you can use any cutter that you want. I do want to use resin as a varnish, so I'm going to be leaving these flat. If you have a sealant that you can use on a domed piece, you can dome these, but it does kind of stretch it out and it doesn't look as nice. So I would recommend leaving it flat. Now I'm going to be using some donuts today, as you can see, and I sell these cutters, and if you're interested in getting some, you can find them on my Etsy shop, but any cutters will work. So I'll be able to cut out a few pieces from this. But before I do that, I actually want to have a look at the back, just to see if I'm happy with it. I would like some texture on it, so I'm just going to put this to the side, and I'm going to go and make another piece of black clay for the back. Okay, so I have my piece of black rolled out, and this was on my middle setting, which is about a millimeter thick. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a sponge to get a nice texture, and I just want a light texture. So I'll just press the sponge up and down the length of the clay, and then we can use it as a backing. There we are. Okay, and now I'm just going to trim up these edges. Take this up and I'll flip it upside down, and I'll grab this and then I'll just smooth that on. There we are. Okay, and that should be stuck on nicely. Now I'm just going to lift it off the paper once so that it's not stuck on there when I try to cut out my donut. And now I'm going to choose the place that I like the best. I think that probably is about there. And now we'll just press down. And now it probably will stick in the cutter since we are working on paper, as you can see. Okay, now move that off to the side onto another piece of paper. And then while it's in the cutter, I like to just smooth away any clay. There we are. Now I'm just going to gently get it out of the cutter. And if you don't want it to stick in the cutter, you can work on a tile, but then you do risk hurting the back by by having it on the tile, and so it's going to make the back a little messy. But there, after a little bit of coaxing, it will come out quite easily. And then you can just pop this out as well. Just like that. Okay. And then I will go onto the tile now and just gently press this down a little bit. And I'm going to cut again. And I'm going to press nice and hard in the middle there to make sure that I get a nice clean cut. And then lift up fast, and it generally will just stick to the tile. And then I'm just going to lift it up. Okay, and then those little bits that were stuck in it come out. There we are. Then you can take your blade, just gently remove any residue. And I like to do this instead of sanding, because you will have to sand the edges. Okay. There we are. And the inside, you can just take your finger and gently smooth. Okay, and there's your piece. You can see how lovely and shiny that is. And now you could then, when you want to seal it, you can just use something like Varathane, or if any of you can get hold of it, PYM2. But I'm going to be using resin. So I'm going to make a few more donuts like this, and then I'm going to bake them for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature, and then we'll be able to finish them off. Okay, and here they are now that I have cut them all out. And I've taken the middles and I've cut out a few more. I had 3, so I've cut out another 3, and I'm now going to make those into earrings, since they're a nice size. So don't end up wasting the holes that you cut out. You can use those as earrings quite easily. And if you're wondering what this cutter looks like, here is the cutter that I used, and you can also get that on my Etsy shop, along with a few more donut cutters. So I'll go and pop these in the oven, and then when they're done we can start assembling them. But there you can see how beautiful and shiny they are. Okay, so they are out of the oven, and hopefully you can see how beautiful they are. The mica powder doesn't change much during the baking process. So now what I ordinarily would tell you to do is to sand the sides and the back, but when working with mica powder it comes off very easily, and so even though this has been brushed on properly, there still is a risk that during the sanding process you can rub against it, or you can accidentally brush a sanding paper against the surface of the bead. So what we're going to do is we're going to coat the surface with resin, and then we're going to sand the sides and the back. And the back needs sanding because we've got a little bit of mica powder on there. So I'll just pop these to the side and I'll bring over my resin mat, and I'm using this one because I'm going to be using magic gloss so that it can go in the UV lamp. Okay, so I'll grab the one that I like the best, and I think I like this one the best. I'm just going to take the magic gloss and I'm going to pour it out on the edge. Okay, and that's all I'm going to do for the moment, and so hopefully you can already see how beautiful this resin makes the piece look. What I'm going to do is I'm gently going to stretch the resin, and now magic gloss likes to pull away from the edges quite a bit, so generally I have to put on quite a bit of resin, but I like to stretch it out a little bit first, see how much it pulls away, and then that gives me an idea of how much more resin I need to put on. There we are, and I'll do it on the inside too. Stretch it towards the inside. And now no matter what resin you're using, this is the method that I would use. I'd put a little bit along the inside and then I would stretch it out, set it for a minute to see how much it pulls away from the edges, and then I would add more as needed, because resin, no matter what type you're using, some more so than others, like to spill over the edges of your piece if you push them a little too far. So you need to just be gentle with this and patient. Okay, and now I do believe that I can add a bit more. So I'm going to just add a bit more along the inside, like so, and then I'll drag it to the edges where it has pulled away. Okay, and I'll continue doing this until I am happy that it's not pulling away from the edges anymore, and then I'll put it in the UV lamp for about half an hour just to make sure that it is completely set. And I'm going to do this for all of my other pieces as well. But before we do that, let me bring over this one, and hopefully you can see there without me even moving it around. You can see the difference in the colour and the fact that it's beautifully shiny now. So I'll go finish these off and then I'll show you what they look like. Okay, and here they are, and I left them in there for about half an hour, and now you can see how beautiful and shiny they are. So you can see how it catches the light perfectly. So from one angle, let's see if I can catch that angle, it looks pretty dull, but then you twist it around and you get this really nice shimmer from it, and all of them are like that. So that's really nice. So now that that's done, I'm going to just take them off, and we want to clean up these sides. So I'm just going to brush those off to the edge here, and I've had some sandpaper soaking in some water off to the side here, and I'm just going to dip my bead in that, because I only use this sort of sandpaper when I need to sand off a lot of material, and I prefer to do it by a sink. It's very hard for me to actually catch on video. So if you're planning on doing this, I recommend actually sanding your beads underwater at the sink in some nice warm soapy water. I put some dishwashing liquid in the water, it makes quite a big difference. And then just sand the edges with this, because I want to cut down any streak lines or anything like that, because I don't want to do the smear that I usually do on these, because I don't want to touch the mica powder. So the edges need quite a bit of a sand compared to usual. and I'll sand from a 400 grit up to a 1200, and then I'll come back and I'll actually sand with with my polishing papers, which is my preferred grit. So I'll continue sanding these, and then I'll show you what they look like when I'm done. Okay, so I've sanded the edges, and you can see they're much neater. The back still needs sanding, but the edges and the insides of here now nice and smooth, and they don't have mica powder on the edge of them anymore. So now what we want to do, so if I put these off to the side, is I'm going to take my polishing papers and I'm going to sand the edges with those, and they're going to make them nice and shiny and give them a good finish. Now when you're sanding, you do want to be careful, because you don't want to be sanding your magic gloss. So what I like to do is I like to hold it in my hand like this, and then I like to press the stamp bed to it so it gets a bit of a crease. You don't want to be sanding it this way around, because you will end up hurting your resin. Sand it this way, and my finger's actually over here, so it's going to be very hard for me to go over the side and harm the resin. So just go around and sand with your 400 grit, then go up all the way through your grits. I'm going to go all the way up to an 8000, and then when that's done, we'll have a nice finished bead. And so I'm just going around and making sure that I've got all of those edges, and then I also want to do the back as well. So if you see the back here, it's going to have sanded off that mica powder that's sitting on the back here. So I'll also go through all my grits on the back, just like that. And then if you can, try and get your polishing paper into the middle part here and just twist around, because you do want that nice and smooth too. Okay, and I'll just continue, and then when I'm done with all of them, I'll show you how they look. Okay, so the edges have been sanded, so they've got a light sheen to them. So hopefully you can see they're nice and smooth. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Dremel to just buff up the sides. There we are. And it's just to shine it up a little bit. But I do want it to still have a light satin finish, and then this part has a really nice shiny finish. So I'm going to go and buff these up, and then I'll show you what they look like when I'm done. Okay, and there we are. So I finished buffing them, and now I've just added on a few cords just to show you what you can do with them. I've done many tutorials where I have finished off the project and shown you how to make these sorts of cords. So if you're interested in that, then there's lots of different tutorials that you can go and have a look at. But I generally have a lot of ready-made cords lying around, so instead of making a new one, I just decided to use some of the ones that I already had. So you can see 3 different examples here. And as for these ones, you can use them as cabochons in projects if you wanted to. You could use them as earrings, it's completely up to you. So I do hope that that tutorial was helpful to you, and that you will now be able to go and make your own Labradorite pieces. Remember, you can use any colour combination you want. You don't necessarily even have to go for Faux Labradorite. It's a nice technique to have, even if you're not going for the Faux Labradorite. Try some purples, some oranges, maybe some more greens. There's lots of different examples that you could try out. And please let me know what you thought in the comments, as that is always very helpful to me. I like hearing your thoughts on it. And if you would like to support me, I do have a Patreon account and I will have a link to that in the description below. And if you would like to see another take on faux labradorite, I do have an Etsy tutorial, and that will also be in the links below. And as always, I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.